Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Tips for a Profitable Hay Season webinar, proudly brought to you by Feed Central in partnership with AFIA. My name is Mark Gerke. I will be your host today for the webinar. I'm the Operations Manager for Feed Central. My role entails looking after the Grower Services Department, the contracts and logistics for Feed Central. So today we've got a cracker of a webinar planned for you. A lot of work has gone into this planning for this webinar, organising the speakers, developing the content, and tripping around the country, visiting farms for us to pull together an overview of the season and what's coming to present to you today. So thanks to all who have contributed today. Just to let you know, this webinar will be recorded and we will distribute it in the future for those who want to watch again. So welcome. We're going to bit of an overview here today, what we're going to cover, do a bit of a welcome, and then we'll do a regional roundup. So the regional roundup involves growers from southern Queensland, central west New South Wales, the Riverina, Victoria, and South Australia. We're going to cover off on some export and domestic market conditions as we look forward to the upcoming season. Then the Feed Central sales team will cover off on what our big domestic buyers are asking for, what our buyers want. And then we're going to have an in-depth discussion with the Feed Central Grower Services team with some tips on making great hay this season. And then we'll end the webinar today with a Q&A session with questions provided by you for our panelists. So as I said, this webinar will be recorded, but we'll likely distribute it in smaller snippets in time to come for people to watch in future. So for questions, if you want to ask a question during this webinar, we have a slide here. You can start contributing to questions, anything you want to ask. There should be a little box down the bottom of your screen called the Q&A box. You can see it there. So you want to click on that button. You can type in any question. We've got a couple of moderators in the background who are going to collate all of these questions, and then we'll be ready to answer them at the end of the session. So also, if you're making hay this season, another thing I wanted to say was, please, in that Q&A box, put it in there. Let us know if you're making hay. And if you want someone to contact you to discuss what you have growing, shoot us through this information in this Q&A box, and we'll have one of our Feed Central team get in touch with you soon enough. So if you do put a question in there, or if you do let us know you're making hay, just put your name and your phone number in there as well. So without further ado, we've got our speakers here today. Here's a list of all the different panelists. We have a few dialing in from the paddock, a few dialing in from their cars, and a few dialing in from home. So it's great to see who is joining in. And so with that said, I will introduce our first speaker is Tim Ford. He's going to give us a welcome. Tim is the Managing Director of Feed Central, has been running Feed Central for the most part of 22 years and loves a good yarn. So take it away, Tim.
Thanks, Mark, and thank you everyone for joining us, and welcome to the webinar. I won't be yarning on for very long at all. We'd just like to welcome everyone that's here, and particularly welcome the Australian Fodder Industry Association directors that are online today, and just acknowledge the work that they do largely voluntarily for the industry, or 100% voluntarily for the industry. I joined the AFIA board a few weeks ago, and so far it's been a pleasure working with those guys. So moving on, we'd also like to welcome our rovers. These are the guys that are working part-time for Feed Central, out and about doing the inspections across the country. So make special recognition for the work that they do, and thanks for joining us today to that great group of people. Also like to just acknowledge the work that the Feed Central's team done behind the scenes to make this happen today. There is a wonderful team of people here. It has grown a lot over the last couple of years, and there's been a great group of people here for a long time. and just like to acknowledge their work and thank them for contribution for today. Finally, just like to say, it's been a really variable season to date. There's many parts of the country that are doing really well. There's parts of the country that are doing really bad. It seems as though the world's been turned on its head, with a lot of the really safe areas, traditional safe areas, doing it really tough, and some of the more marginal areas doing it really well. There's been frost, there's been drought. In some places it's too wet. It's been very windy and cold and all sorts of weather over the last couple of weeks, and it's been really record heat in southern Queensland. So I know that agriculture is all about boom and bust, and it's all about hot and dry and wet and cold. But this year the variability just seems to be incredible. It's really only the advances in the very best farming practices that we've seen in the last 20 years or so that are seeing so many of the growers actually survive and prosper this season. So look, I think the key points for this season is the standout point to me is that the stockpile is largely gone. That big buildup of low quality hay from 2022. I think we're all really glad to see the back end of that. I don't think there'd be one person on this webinar today that was really proud of what happened in 2022. And it's so good to see that behind us. But it is just amazing how that hay has been a really important contributor to the hay market and the livestock industries around the country over the last few months. But it is great to see the back end of it. The other message is that there will be demand for all grades of hay. I think that the work that the likes of Feed Central have done in the last few years with the grading of hay and so forth means that buyers can buy that lower grade hay, and they're more used to perhaps using it. So we don't want to make it, but if it does get made, then there will be I think we've seen there will be a market for it. The stockpile is gone. The sheds are largely empty. And when you do drive around the country, you do see some hay in the sheds, but by all reports, the majority of that is contracted and sold. And what will sell first, as always, good quality hay in high density bales will sell ahead of the other product. At the end of the day, your cows are eating 365 days of the year, and we need to make hay. When you really think about it, we have about a 90-day window to make hay. The majority of the hay being cereal hay, veg hay, gets made in a 90-day window from September to November across this country. So we are going to drive around the country. We are going to see lots and lots of hay being made in the next 90 days. That's normal, and we have to get that made, and so the cows can eat it over the next 365 days. It's 365 days to the next harvest. Let's not forget that, and let's get in and get those hay sheds. Appreciate everyone's support. We value the contribution of growers and buyers across the country. If you need anything over the season, please get in touch. We've got a team that are here to help, and we're wishing you all the very best for a very productive and profitable hay season.
Thank you, Tim. Well, moving on, I'd just like to give a brief overview of the Feed Central system from a grower's perspective, just to detail what the process is before getting hay advertised onto our web platform. We've got, as Tim said, we've got teams of great people within Feed Central who will help you every step of the way. So if you've got any questions, queries, shoot them through, and we'll help you all the way through to sale contracts where we can get your hay purchased, delivered and paid for using the system. So just a couple of facts and figures from last year, for last season. We peaked at about 300,000 tonnes advertised. We had about 5,000 growers registered in the system. We've had their hay listed with Feed Central, and we delivered to almost 1,000 different buyers across the country. And as you can see there, the hay that was purchased through Feed Central moved a whopping 780,000 kilometres last year. But more on this later as we discuss the importance of bale weights when we talk about what buyers want, because we essentially move hay from SA all the way to Queensland, big distances and big tonnages. So Feed Central's system gives you exposure to buyers across the country. It isn't limited to your local market. We open the door to moving your product across the country. Here we got a step-by-step process on how your hay gets listed onto our Feed Central web platform, also known as our quality assurance process. So the first step is the on-farm inspection. Once you've baled your hay, you want to give us a call if you haven't already, and we'll discuss your product, what you have, when it was baled, where you are, and when you're available. And then our team will organise one of our Feed Central team or our rovers to come out to your property, inspect your hay. We'll not only take a grab sample, but also a core sample using our Feed Central corers, which you can buy also on our website, little plug there, but from multiple different bales in your stack that the corer goes in to give you the best possible hay sample. We'll take moistures, take photos of the stack, talk about access for trucks and any other details the team needs to know to getting your product onto the system. The sample's then sent to us in the office here at Charlton. Here we confirm and verify that our inspectors, what they've inspected, verify their results and check all the data and give it that visual rating of the FCAA, A, B or C. The core sample is then sent to the lab where it's ground down even further into a tiny particle size, and then we run it through our NIR machine or a near infrared where we analyse the chemical makeup of the sample, which then produces a detailed quality certificate showing not only the lab results, including the protein, energy and fibre, starch and more, but a detailed visual analysis of the hay, so the stem, the colour, the moisture, aroma, and all the harvesting details to give the buyers all the information they need to make an informed purchase. And then once this quality certificate is produced, it goes over to our sales team who will give you a call. Back. Can anyone still hear me? Yep, good. Have you still got me?
Yeah, we got you, Mark. We got you.
Sorry, Tim. Yep. Just keeps dropping out of me. No worries. All right. The next step we have, here's a picture of then what our buyers will see when they're searching through our system looking for the product. You can see that the visual grade indicator is what's shown on each photo. Oh, you've lost my sharing. Okay, let's hold with me here. Let's go share. Rightio, everyone got the screen back again?
Sure.
Beauty.
Yep.
Rightio, as you can see the visual grade indicator is what's shown on each photo, and then also an approximate location of where the product is, and then also a tailored delivered price to the buyer based on their location on where they're searching from. And then buyers can then click into each product where they can view the quality certificate, which has all those details on that we spoke about and that we've previously captured on the quality of your hay. So if then the buyers choose to purchase it, our sales team will then be in contact with you directly to organise a purchase contract for your hay. So then moving on. And here we have just the benefits of marketing hay through Feed Central. Look, our web platform is 24/7. Buyers and sellers can get on there and look at their own product or look at product that they want to buy. It's 24/7 access. There's no stopping people from getting onto that website. We've got a dedicated sales team who are there to help buyers every step of the way, and you as growers as well, to talk about your product and to market that product as well. We've got that quality assurance certificate, which speaks for itself in the hay that's being sold. We pride ourselves on producing quality hay and basically selling hay that is what it is, and it's not. There's no hidden things in that hay. The grower sets their own price, often based upon what the market is. The sales team will have a chat with you, but yeah, you determine your price. We do spot and long-term contracts, whether that's just a load here and there of a single, a B double, or a road train, or we have a long-term spread contract where we do multiple deliveries into a buyer's place. We do all the logistics coordination and the contracts management there as well. This is a big part of the Feed Central team. We organise the trucks across the country. We have a few dedicated long-term carriers who've been with us for a long time, and we also have multiple other carriers that can jump on our website and choose the deliveries that they wish to do. We have guaranteed on-time payment, so you can know that when you list your hay and we sell your hay, that you'll be paid on time. And ultimately, you're selling your hay to a national network of buyers, not just over the fence, but also you could potentially be selling your hay to someone 1,000 kilometres away. Alrighty, next one we have is our regional roundup. So what I'll do now is we're going to chat with our growers from all around Australia and get their insights into what's happening in their region. As you can see, first up we had Will Huff, but unfortunately his tractor broke down this morning and he had the choice to continue baling or be on the webinar. So he's decided to fix his tractor and keep baling. So he's unfortunately pulled out. But instead of Will, we're going to have Dave to give us an insight into the Southern Queensland market.
Thanks,
Dave,
Mark.
welcome, mate. How are you? Tell us a bit about yourself.
And, Rightio, mate. Dave
going
Clothier. I'm the National Sales Manager for Feed Central. Been in the livestock industry most of my life. Brought up on the land. So, you know, I'm dealing with, I've sort of working both sides of the fence throughout my life. It's good to travel the country in recent times and just see what's going on right across the country, but particularly for the last few weeks, myself and the sales team have been out actively talking to buyers and sellers to get a real understanding of what's going on in their own backyard. So just in the last few days, I've been sort of across the Darling Downs, and what's real good to see is that crops are just looking amazing. Best for many years. Many of the growers we spoke to over the last few days, it's the best in their lifetime. There's going to be some very big grain yields, that's for sure. And the overall conditions for haymaking have been very favourable, although the haymaking decision window is rapidly closing just due to the warmer temperatures, and the crops are advancing pretty quickly with the warmer temperatures. The hay demand has been really high. Like, there has been considerable volume. You know, keep in mind we're talking about southeast Queensland, so not the volume of the south, but there has been quite a bit of hay made, a lot of local demand, whether it be in the Darling Downs or further west, and that has consumed or committed most of the product that's been made. There's still some to make, but the majority has been sold. You know, the other thing I could say with, you know, the forecast grain harvest, it's put some downward pressure on pricing due to the falling grain prices, and we've seen it move considerably over the last couple of weeks with the volume of the hay that's been made up here. So that's about it from the southeast, Mark.
Beautiful. Thank you, Dave. Next, we're going to cut across to Nathan Ovington. He's from the Central West, New South Wales. Welcome, Nathan. How are you, mate?
Thanks, Mark.
That's good. What's going on your farm today, mate?
A bit of spraying today, mate. We're starting to move around a bit now. We're starting to dry out, and things are looking well.
You were wet, were you?
We were, yeah. The whole season's sort of been up and down with rain, but from the very get-go, it's just been fantastic. Rain's been on time, depending on where we are. You know, rain's probably been a little bit too much north and south of us, but here in our little pocket, it's been fantastic. And
what do you got growing on your farm at the moment?
This year we got wheat, some barley, canola, lentils, chickpeas.
Yep. And around the district, what's sort of growing in the region there?
Yeah, pretty much similar. There's a lot of favour beans in this year. It's pretty easy to see the canola in the district. There's quite a bit of canola, a lot of wheat, and it's probably standard amounts. But overall, the chat around the area is just very optimistic. There's a you know, good prosperity for an excellent harvest, and whether that be for hay or grain, everything, you know, cereal wise is looking fantastic. And the ground is starting to firm up a bit. We've still got paddocks where, not us in particular, but neighbours, they're still struggling to get rigs on paddocks, and the planes have been busy getting fungicides out. But no, in general, it's all sounding pretty good.
So what's that ratio looking like between making grain or making hay?
For us,
yourself?
for us, we'll do, I think, at least a third of our cereal for hay. Pretty similar to what Dave said. We'll assess that as the window closes. But we've already sort of allocated a few paddocks, and that might be around 600 hectares in the end for us that we'll end up doing for hay. But that's really just seasonal dependent. If we get the weather to make it, we'll certainly do it. But if not, we'll let it go through to grain.
Yeah. And what's that weather? What weather do you need now at this time of season?
Well, we're still a little bit cold. This time of the year last year, we actually we already had hay cut, and we're only 2 weeks off making some fresh hay.
Yeah, right.
But now we're still another 2 weeks off having sort of wheat that's ready to cut. And then I sort of expect here we're anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks to get it to cure. We really want some warm weather anyways to kick things on, but I suspect it's going to come around pretty quick. So it's only extending the season for us, which is just adding yield to the majority of the crops.
Yeah. And where are you storing your hay? You got some sheds to put them in?
Yeah, we do. We've already got some sheds here, but we're working on getting a couple of new sheds put up, hopefully in time for some fresh hay. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Good to hear. We like new sheds. We like sheds for hay.
Indeed.
No worries. Thanks, Nathan.
Thanks, Mark.
Next up, we will go across to Harry Duval. He's from the Riverina in New South Wales. Growing a bit of oats and barley and vetch. He's been growing hay for about 5 years. Attended some AFIA conferences for 4 and has been an AFIA member for a year. So welcome, Harry.
Thanks
Tell us
very
a bit
much for
about-
the time.
No worries, mate. Tell us a bit about yourself and what's going on at your farm today.
Yeah, right. So I'm been in the farming game pretty well since I left school. My background was earth moving, with a very big passion of farming. So we've sort of started off back down in Goulburn, and we expanded out into a bit further into New South Wales up to where it's West Wyalong. We started growing a bit of hay out there and a bit of grain and trying a few different things.
Great. And what's the season looking like for you guys there at West Wyalong?
Yeah, much the same from the last 2 growers. We're having a really, really good season. It's the best I've seen in my short time. And we would like to see a little bit of warm weather come through as well, so we could start getting right into it. But it looks fantastic. I think going below us, sort of across to Wagga Wagga, that seems to be the line where the rain starts to was quite late going down into Victoria.
Yeah. And what sort of weather do you need to finish off your crops?
We'd love to see a little bit warm weather. With the amount of hay that we're going to try and make this year, we're going to start a little early and play around with a few different machines and see what we can do to make a bit of hay in some cooler climate, potentially a little bit of wet climate, as that's what they're talking for us.
Yeah. And in the rest of the region, in the rest of your area, is there much hay being made around there?
Not an awful lot. No, there's a fair bit of vetch around, but for the most part, a lot of it's going to grain.
Yeah. And were you guys doing any grain this year?
Yeah, we will. With our split's probably 70% hay in our Western New South Wales areas, and the other 30%'s going to grain.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you, Harry.
Awesome.
Thanks for the
Thanks very
roundup
much.
of the of your region. Just a reminder for everyone who's just joined in, send through your questions. We've been getting a few through, so use that little Q&A button down the bottom and send them in. Next up, we're going to cut across to Cole. Cole Radcliffe from the Wimmera and Mallee regions in Victoria. He's been a member of AFIA for a number of years. And so welcome, Cole. Tell us a bit about yourself and what's going on over your way.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Cole Radcliffe. I farm here at Corrine with my brother Brett, his wife Karen, and their son Jack, who will be moving into the 6th generation of the family farm. So we've been here for quite a while. We've been in the hay industry ever since I was a young fellow. I remember Dad, with little square bales back in, as soon as I can remember. So, we farm about 3,200 hectares, 600 of which is irrigated. We're a little bit different to the last couple of guys that have been speaking. We're just on the edge of the dryness, where we started the season with a full profile of moisture. It had a bit of a rough germination, a patchy germination to start with, because the topsoil was a little bit dried out. But we got going probably only 10 days later than what I'd like to see. And then we've had good follow-up rain through June, July, which kept our moisture profile full. But we haven't had anything since mid-July. So we're really starting to feel the effects, especially with the wind in the last, the last 2 weeks with the temperature and the wind. The root zone's struggling to keep up with their soil moisture. So the vetches all started to flower, the oats are starting to come out in head. We have got, I'll put our season here about average at this stage.
Yep.
But certainly losing potential every day with the lack of rain now. We would have loved to have seen 30 mil a couple of weeks ago, and we would have been in as good as the boys in New South. But as it is, where we have got subsoil moisture, but with the heat and wind, the roots are struggling to keep up with it disappearing. We'll get started into our hay season next week.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
So it is not too far away from Harry, but there's quite a difference in
enormous
seasons.
difference, for sure.
Yeah.
And we have still got potential in some of our cereal crops. Our hay crops are, they've already decided they've gone as far as they can, so they're trying to set seed now. And the oats are just starting to come out, and the veggies probably will be into that on Monday. But the cereal crops we've still got, we've got a bit of biomass there, so I will be considering taking some of them through to hay now rather than grain. But we'll have to wait for them to come out and head before we make that decision. You only have to go, our furthest west property is 40k from our home block, and you go west of that, that's on the edge. You go west of that and southwest, it's even worse than where we are. So, we're fortunate in our district.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are you seeing? So you've been going for drives, I suppose, around Victoria. What are you seeing further around Victoria in that western country there?
Yeah, even struggling. The yield has certainly been knocked back in that western district of Victoria. We have been freighting hay down that way ourselves, which is very unusual for us. Generally, that might be the second time in 20 years we've carted hay down south from here. We go into Gippsland, but going to Western Victoria is very unusual. They're having a green drought. They have got they've had a bit of rain, but they certainly are going to need a kind spring to be able to survive. So in our area, there's we've had a run a good season, so I guess it's our turn. But because of that, there's I would estimate our hay production in our area will be down 30 to 40% on usual, and our yields will be down to probably average, maybe a bit below at this stage. With that, generally does come quality, but our yields have certainly been affected.
Yep. And driving around, looking at the sheds, are they full or are they empty?
Most of them are empty, and what isn't empty has already been sold, just waiting for delivery. There's not much hay left in our district at all.
No, we're going to touch on a bit of the weather observations later on, and that you can just really see the drought that's been through Victoria there.
Yeah.
Site,
No.
yeah, you're right.
Look, we've probably, our hay production itself this year, we're probably only 40% of our program, where quite often we have been up to 100%. In years such as this, we're quite happy to throw the mower at the farm and level the farm if we think we can make more out of the hay than we can. If we're suffering on the grain, we're quite happy to throw the mower at the whole farm. So that decision, I guess, will be made in about 3 or 4 weeks' time, depending on what the weather's doing.
Yep.
Yeah, so
Well, thank you, Carl.
no worries.
Now we're going to go across to Brad Griffiths from South Australia. He's been a member of AFIA for 14 years. And Brad, welcome. Tell us a bit about yourself and what's going on in your region, mate.
Thanks, Mark. And yeah, thanks for having me on. Yeah, I suppose listening to all the other boys just talk, then we're probably on the other end of the spectrum here in South Australia, where we've had a really late start, like compared to what we usually are. We're probably a month to 6 weeks behind at least, I would say. And yeah, this warm, windy weather is not helping at all. So yeah, what Tim said at the start of the webinar when he said there's some really good parts of the country and there's some pretty ordinary parts, well, we're definitely in the ordinary part at the moment, unfortunately. Similar to the last fella, we've had a pretty good run of seasons here in the last couple of years, and this one sort of caught us a bit off guard. So the state, I would say, as a whole, is pretty ordinary. To like an average at best, I'd say. So yeah, I've been traveling around a bit over the last couple of weeks, and yeah, we're definitely staring down the barrel of a pretty harsh season in this part.
Yeah. So I mean, historically, SA has been sort of our national reserve. In really bad droughts, we've always gone over there to secure supply. But obviously, that means that, yeah, are you guys going to have any supply next year when we are all needed in June, July?
That's a good, yeah, that's the $100,000 question, I think. And you tell me what happens over the next couple of weeks. I think we're going to need serious rain over the next couple of weeks to even get anywhere near average yields, to be honest. And I fear there'll be a lot of areas north of where we are that probably won't get a mower in the paddock, definitely won't get a header in the paddock. Which is, yeah, pretty concerning.
Yeah. What are you seeing going on in the export market? Are they knocking on your door there?
The exporters have sort of been sitting on their hands for a while. I think everyone's sort of a bit overwhelmed by the season. I think I just don't think anyone's really got a great idea on where it's going to go. That I can see our oats here, which are probably still, I'm going to say a good 4 weeks off cutting, 4 to 6 weeks off cutting, and knowing what oats can do, burn off and go brown and struggle to come out and head in these typically dry seasons, that the exporters potentially won't want that, or could be wrong. But look, I think from the exporters' point of view, like they're sitting on not a lot of carryover, so they'll be in the marketplace, but whether they'll be keen on buying some of that, brown leafy sort of type hay, droughted hay, who knows? Yep.
Yeah, so it's quite a different regional roundup from you, Brad. So thanks for that. It's across the country we are quite widespread in where things are at. So thank you to everyone who has shared. If you have any questions from these guys, send them through in the Q&A, and we'll try and get them answered at the end of the webinar, where we'll discuss any of those questions. So next up, we are going to have a bit of a market report. First off, we're going to be from Robert Ford. He is the General Manager of Sales and Marketing at Pentarg Agriculture, and he'll be talking us through the export hay market. So if you just bear with us here, I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to let Rob start sharing his screen. Welcome, Rob.
Thank you. And I'll get the right screen here. So just confirming, Mark, you can see that?
Yep, we've got it, Rob. Thank you.
Right. So I just want to, Tim's just asked me to give a bit of a perspective from my point of view on the export market. Just reminding people, this is my own view, so other exporters may have a different view. It's still a very big industry, as you can see, spread across most of the key hake producing areas. And one of the things to highlight is capacity continues to grow each year with some investments over the last few years by most of the major exporters and a couple of new industry participants. So I think going back to Brad's comment there, I agree there's a very low carry out, particularly in West Australia, variable carry out in Victoria of different grades of hay, but there still will be a significant need for either buying or letting capacity just sort of ease back off a little bit as we know. So our Pentac runs as two brands, just for the background, Mallee Hay out of, really 2.5 brands, Mallee Hay out of Ultima, where I am today, Narrogin Hay out of West Australia, and we also market Wilson's Hay out of Tocumwal. That's our Narrogin plant, which is our original and older plant. We've been running over there since the late 90s. Well, we're actually exporting before we build a facility, but that runs 2 presses and usually running on a 24/7 sort of shift pattern. And this is our Mallee site with some recent additions there. The weighbridge is, when that photo was taken, was under construction, expanding it to a road train weighbridge, and the grain container packing facility out the back. So that's been a pleasing thing to see some of that investment continue here in the Mallee. Just to give a bit of an overview of the global industry, it's been pretty static for a number of years. You could probably track this back another 4 or 5 years. There's around about 7 million tonne of traded hay from all of different markets, dominated by Japan every year. In 2022 into 2023, we saw a major correction in demand, largely off just the economic issues, and we initially thought it was probably the quality issues of the East Coast hay crop, but it was certainly a global issue, and that's led to a bit of an oversupply in the market, almost out of everywhere from Spain to the US to Australia. And on the back of some pretty challenging buying conditions and the losses probably from that 22 into 23, 23, 24 has probably also remained quite a challenge profitability wise for the exporters. There is a lot of stock, particularly in China, in a lot of our customers' warehouses. So some of the export figures have actually been a little bit misleading because it actually hasn't been selling. And there's a lot of distressed, particularly US cargo, in a lot of the Chinese warehouses. We've had, some Australian producers have maintained their production and left product unsold in China, and are actually losing money as that market keeps to slump in China. So it's very challenging for a number of the markets. China is a story that everyone hears a lot in the media about, but what's driving it is really a significant correction in their milk supply. The government is pushing a reduction in herd numbers. The big 4 main dairy companies have cut the quotas and cut the prices well below where this graph is. Where it's trading at the moment is around about 50 cents Australian per litre of milk, which is really unsustainable. So not only are we seeing a reduction in cattle, but we're seeing them cut back the feed rate by nearly 60%, and that's really had a significant impact in China. So whilst we often focus on the noise that comes out of China, Japan is still what we need to focus on as an industry. Japan is always and probably will always be the biggest market consistently for quality export hay. You can see through that chart, which is month on month figures for Japan. So it really is an important market. The others sort of are thereabouts, you know, we pick up and we drop off there. But that's one that really needs to focus on. The issue in Japan has all been currency driven. Their milk price has continued to rise, but their currency has been unfavourable, just falling in terms of the US. And that uncertainty in recent times we've seen, we're suffering from the pressure of the yen just continuing to rise. And just in the recent weeks, that volatility on the way down has had buyers really delay pricing. They don't want to buy too early because the currency might move better for them. So whilst we anticipate some movements in pricing for Japan, the lack of commitment early from our buyers is delaying probably those pricing signals that, again, I think Brad might have referred to. To give it just a real simple, I call this the Big Mac index. You know, what does this all mean when you compare hay price, milk price, and currency? For a long time, the Japanese were paying, you know, needing to produce somewhere around 360, 370 litres of milk to afford 1 tonne of Australian hay. Recently, it's gone up to nearly as much as 600, and whilst the currency and milk price has improved, it's still significantly higher than it has been in the past. So to help manage this, we have seen a reduction in feeding rates. They've been buying more straw. They're using some alternative products, and strategically using oat and hay where they really know it makes a difference. For example, that pre-calving period or early lactation. So that's really the nut of what's probably driving a lot of that demand down overseas. From the outlook, you know, and this is moving as quickly as what the grower roundup was indicating as well. But the pleasing thing, the industry's moved almost all of that 22 weather damaged stock. Most of it ended up back in the domestic market, but there was some that was exported in different blends and stuff out as well. And whilst I'm talking about Asia's demand being depressed, I think we're starting to see some improved economic drivers out of particularly Japan. If we can see that bank continuing to potentially increase their interest rates to reduce the differential to the US interest rates, that should help. But it's very much a cautious environment at the moment. And I would not, we shouldn't underestimate what we think may or may not happen with the US election and the policies relating China. And, if we suddenly see China swing away from US imports and other things, it will be game on. So we're watching for some of those signs to come. I think, we'll, again, some way the export industry will find a way of exporting circa 1 million tonne of hay or straw product. Again, I'll just pick up on the comment that Brad made. I'd be very surprised if, most buyers are not interested in some of that mid-grade hay to meet the economics of what the customer is looking for. So just as from where I sit, the pricing signals are late. We've put our pricing out this week in a cautious approach to guys because the season's coming early and they really need to know what price they're going to be delivering it in at. But I would just recommend, again, if you're putting hay away in the shed, you might as well bale it to export standards and have both the export and the domestic markets open. Whilst we're waiting for good rain to help finish the crops, that's probably what's needed in the domestic demand areas, just to kick them into a good spring, and we'll see which way that demand could disappear quickly as well. So having hay that's capable of going into both markets is probably a bit of advice I'd give, particularly people in Victoria, South Australia and WA. We're finding issues with quality too. So I'm going to encourage, I know the sector here on making quality hay. We found that the buyers, when they're doing it tough, are just less forgiving. So any contamination, anything that they can make a claim of economic, sense, they are doing it. So we're really going to be working hard with growers to make sure that that attention to detail is there, as setting your rakes right, getting the mowing height right, making sure if there's any sort of contamination in the paddock that it's isolated out, all those things. Again, encourage what I think good haymakers have taught me over the years is be patient, be prepared to walk away from it and just leave it in the windrow and come back when it's ready to go. So that's a key that I'd still encourage everyone to do. And I think, the exporters have got a lot of fixed assets that they've got to run. We will be in the market. It's late for I'm talking on behalf of exporters here. It's much later than what most exporters are engaging in buying, but it will come in my view. So that's hopefully gives you some wrap up from my perspective as someone that's actively in the export procurement and sales area.
Thank you, Rob. Yeah, definitely echo the quality statements there. We do want good quality hay entering into the market, that's for sure. All right, next up, Dave, give us a domestic market update, mate.
No worries at all, Mark.
I'll start sharing my screen here in 1 sec. Everyone see that screen?
Yep, thanks, Mark.
Great.
Rightio, we'll start just giving a market report domestically. And largely I'm going to be talking about demand because it's pretty exciting in my book when we look at the national livestock picture. Every month the Alpha board puts out an update of cattle on feed and that sort of thing, and every record's been broken for the last few months. We now have 1.4 million cattle on feed, highest on record. Expansion still going on, and with grain prices currently falling, I think a pretty interesting statement to make would be that feedlots will continue to be full, which means there will be a high demand for hay and straw. Livestock prices are improving as we're coming out of winter, and they're reported to be pretty healthy as we move forward into summer. In the States, the herd rebuild will have considerable impact on the global markets, driving up demand for Australian beef. And that's largely because they'll struggle to fill their own domestic needs, which will create opportunities for us. And our next point is if we just look at each of the sectors, the Australian beef herd is marginally back. You can pretty much say it's stable year on year. The female retention rate is remaining above average. Largely in Northern Australia, it's actually still on the increase, and that's just due to a number of very healthy wet seasons. So their breeding herds are still increasing and marginally going back in the south. That's a very healthy sign for the future. And again, with the US cattle herd, their intense rebuild will just drive that domestic side, opening up the export opportunities for Australian beef into the Asian markets, as well as the US, which is opening up. If we look at the dairy sector, milk production's forecast to be slightly lower than last year, but demand expected to remain steady. And prices are down based on record highs. And I think what we'll see in the dairy sector is the lower farm gate prices will pressure farm profitability, and those quality certificates and feed test results will largely drive purchase decisions going forward. We can't forget about the sheep. The flock size is it's just talking about coming back marginally to 76.5 million head. Lamb production's going up 9%, largely due to New South Wales season and so forth. Mutton prices are slightly up at 3%, and the flocks forecast to stabilise to remain above the 10-year average. So across all those livestock sectors, it looks pretty damn healthy, I think. And when we understand that they've all got 365 days of the year, we need to make as much hay as we can, obviously.
Looking at the weather.
Sorry?
Looking at the weather now.
Yeah. Looking at the weather, look, it's interesting just to look over the last 12 months. It sort of supports what we know, and that is that it's been dry in the south over the last 12 months and sustained right through to as we speak right now. And that's largely what's depleted the stockpile that a number of us have been talking about through this webinar, and really helps from a national perspective to understand why that stockpile's been depleted and potentially where traditional suppliers are going to become buyers. Through that southern area particularly, it's been commented on by Brad and Cole that, you know, yields will be compromised, and that will have an effect on the total national supply. So we just need to be mindful of that. And it will also have an effect on reducing volumes of vetch, particularly through that Mallee area. So that what's going on in the south certainly has an effect on the nation regarding supply moving forward. So again, like the stockpile is largely gone, and it is just amazing how many people across the country aren't quite aware of what's happening. But all of that 22 damage stuff, as Rob just said prior to me, it's largely gone, or it's committed. So just because we're seeing hay in sheds does not mean it's available. There will be demand for all grades of hay. We've proven that particularly over the last 12 months, and that's why the stockpile's empty. So regardless on what the season puts in front of us, it'll all sell. And we are encouraging all of our growers to fill the sheds with hay. Again, we're only making hay for that 60 to 90 day period. We need to supply the market for 365 days of the year. And we'll talk about bale weights a little bit later, but good quality, high density bales will always sell first. They're always in higher demand. They just relates to lower delivered prices. Thanks, Mark.
Excellent. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Rob, for the market update, market overview of both domestic and export as well. So our next section is called What Buyers Want. We're going to introduce Alex Smith, who's there with Cole and Steve today. Alex is our regional sales manager down in southern New South Wales, Vic. He gets on the road quite a bit, visiting with both growers and buyers. Dabbles a bit in the cattle market himself, so he knows what buyers are looking for when it comes to top quality hay. So welcome, Alex.
Thank you, Mark. As Mark said, my name's Alex Smith. I'm based out of Holbrook in the southeast parts of the Riverina, just below Wagga, and echoing Cole and Harry's statements, that's probably where the season cut off, around that Wagga spot, although we have had some rain lately and just waiting for that spring growth to kick in. But today I'll be talking a little bit about what the buyers want and just running through a few points on that. So first up, we've got high quality and high density bales, or heavy bales. Obviously, everyone's striving to make the highest quality possible. However, your point of difference majority of the time can be the fact that you can get extra weight in your bales compared to someone else. You can maximize the freight efficiency by having those high density bales, and it's highly preferred with majority of our buyers, whether that be a 8x4x3 big square or even a round. If you have a high quality bale with the most amount of weight possible, you'll be front of the queue. The next point is high energy and good protein. So baling cutting, I should say, when it's immature is key. The higher the crude protein and ME is the best possible case for most buyers. So cutting early and having all those conditions line up, it will give you the best feed test possible. Consistency in colour with minimal weather damage. I know we can't really control the weather, but looking forward to forecasts and trying to find a window to get your product in and cut, and whether it be an oat or a vetch or a barley, wheat, lucerne, a nice green leaf and a nice green product will give you a really good visual grade along with your feed test, and it'll put it front of queue. Consistency across the bales, a little bit to Rob's point earlier. If you have a paddock where there's variability from one end to the other, or a paddock where a boom spray mightn't have got to the corner, having the ability to recognise that, separate those lots, it will give the best representation of that quality certificate, load by load, from the start of your contract through to the very end. And it will also be representative of the feed test. Shedded products are very high on a buyer's demand list. Access to product 365 days of the year, having drainage, the ability to load it efficiently, have your loads coming in and out on time when the buyer needs it. It will certainly put you to the front of the queue, whether the sales team or the web sales have an inquiry on some product. As we move through to the next slide, I'm just going to show you a little bit about what an FCAA product or an FCA product looks like. So as we go out and do a visual assessment, your product will be graded through a variety of questions, which Steve will take you through later on. However, that fuel gauge you see in the bottom right-hand corner of the picture is just a really easy and quick way for the buyers to scroll through, find a product that suits their specifications, and instead of looking through 100 lots, it might bring it down to look through 10, and then they'll dig a bit further and deeper into that particular product based on their needs. As you can see, they're all full of colour, their protein and their energy are as high as possible, and it's just a product that would suit the majority of buyers' needs. On to the next slide, you'll see an FCA. Now, this is probably where you need to take particular attention to the fuel gauge. It can be a really high A grade or a low one where that fuel gauge arrow is. And that is where they can separate something that might have just had a couple of little deficiencies over the cutting or baling time compared to something that has nearly had a perfect process and would suit the needs. But by and all, an FCA or an FCAA is what the majority of our buyers ask for time and time again, because it's just a quality product and it is representative of the load after load after load of that particular line of hay.
Excellent.
Anyway, I think that's it for me.
Thanks,
Thank
Alex.
you.
Dave, you're back on again, mate. We are talking
Thanks very
bale
much.
weight.
Thanks, Mark. Hey, look, I just thought it was interesting just to look at the effect of bale weights over a particular job if we're looking for like products. And I just think this was a simple way to talk about it. So if we were to look at two lines of hay being identical, just with different bale weights, so same feed test, same location, the whole deal. If my average bale weight was 500 kgs and I was asking $350 a tonne ex-farm for it, if we just talk about a B double at the moment with 30 tonne load over 500 Ks, you can see the delivered price there of 467 over 500 Ks and 1,000 Ks at 583. Why have your bales move first is because of these numbers on the right hand side. So the same quality hay in the same location, bale weight to 650 kilos, a higher ex-farm price of another $25 or $375, get another 9 tonne on the truck. When we look at over 500k distance, it's about the same. It's slightly less for the buyer. He saves a couple of bucks a tonne, but the grower makes an extra $25 a tonne. And over the longer distances, if we get out to 1,000 kilometres, well, there's $25 additionally for the grower, and there's a saving of roughly $30 from the buyer. So when we're looking at bar weights, it is incredibly important to maximise that to the best of our ability, because it's a win-win for both sides, buyer and seller, and I don't know who does not want to play in that space. So interesting exercise. The other one that's not in there, but the obvious effect of having higher bar weights is it just gives you greater storage capacity. The heavier the bars are, the more tons you fit in your shed. So win-win for everybody with higher bar weights. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Dave. All right, up next, we have the session you've all been waiting for. It's tips for making great hay this season. Welcome back to Cole Radcliffe, and welcome to Steve Page. I know a lot of you may know Steve already, but welcome, Steve. Give us a bit of a rundown of who you are, and I'll leave it for you and Cole to have a session about making great hay.
Yeah, thanks, Mark, and welcome back, Cole.
Thanks, Cole.
Yeah, like I've been with Feed Central now just over 9 years. A lot of you, as to say, would know me because I've been on your properties, either doing inspections or just catching up in the paddock with you and looking at what's going on. So yeah, nice to be doing this, and great to have Cole with us. And I have learned so much myself with Cole over the years by either being in the paddock with him or just in the shed doing inspections. He's the Radcliffe family are quite well renowned within the district and within Victoria and Australia overall. So Cole, just like to start the chat off and say, yeah, how we've just heard how the season's going for you. The paddocks on your, we'll concentrate mainly today on the cereal hay. You've got some that would normally go for grain, and some that will be allocated for hay right up at the beginning. When you come into a difficult season like this, are those paddocks allocated to grain? Are they situated so you can flick backwards and forwards between grain and hay production? Or
yeah, they are. We do pick paddocks that we may sacrifice into hay later in the season. So we try to make sure the previous season's double management is correct. We will also go in and roll paddocks as well. So the previous stubble crop. So yeah, we're generally our open hay goes into our barley stubbles. So we start our program with cutting our barley stubble down with the header and spreading it, the excess straw. That'll be done at harvest, down to 4 to 5 inches high. Yeah, and then we winter row sow our oats into that. Generally somewhere around 90 kilos a hectare of oat seed, depending on seed grade. Weight of your seed. If we got really heavy seed that we've had the last year or so, that's increased to 100 kilos. If we got real lightweight seed, yeah, we might back it off a little bit, back down to 85 kilos. Depending on what the crop's been previously, we're running in with Granulock with zinc this year. Because it was going on the big stubbles, we ended up at 60 kilos a hectare, and followed up basically as soon as it comes out of the ground with another 100 kilos of urea. We believe you need your nitrogen on early to try and get the plant to tiller, but you don't want nitrogen in your open hay at the end because that will bugger up your water-soluble carbohydrate test. So yeah, our belief is any fertiliser's got to be early, and then just lock it up after that.
Right, okay. And what about your crop health? How's your fungicide treatments and much here? Or?
Yeah, look, we do. We've just finished applying our fungicides. We generally will put a fungicide on. Well, we try to pick our cutting date, and you need to have it on 3 weeks prior. With Taser, it will also give you some protection in the windrow, but you do have a 3-week withholding period before you're able to cut. So we generally, try to have it on that 3 weeks prior. If you can pick when that is, you've done well. We're not too bad. We're in a few days as a rule. But yeah, that's just an insurance policy. If we're in a drier time and we haven't got the biomass, we might forget about the fungicides. You don't always need it. It's more of an insurance claim, insurance policy for us when you've got a half decent crop.
Right, and then moving on to cutting. What have you got? How do you cut? Have you got a mower conditioner?
Yeah, cereals have to be mower conditioned. If you're only going to go and windrow a cereal crop, it's going to be on the ground 6 or 8 weeks. It just will not cure out. So our belief is it has to be conditioned. With cereal hay, the harder the better. It's pretty hard to damage it. So yeah, you need to get a really good, solid conditioning job done.
Yep. Yeah. And I know you've just had another mower conditioner ordered, and it hasn't issues with the supplier to get it. But
Yes.
Can you explain your old mower conditioner was about 10 years old, and
10 or 12 years old. We're running a New Holland self-propelled mower. We were operating with one steel, one rubber flat roller that try to roll the full length of the stem. If you can get something that'll roll the full length of the stem, you will get your curing process a lot shorter. We kept on having issues with the rubber, kept on coming off. So the cost of operation was just too great. We've just gone back to steel roll, steel on steel, and crimping the stem. It has slowed our curing process down. So we did get had a new razor bar self-propelled coming this year, but there's issues with supply at the moment again. So we might have to just put up and run the New Holland a bit harder again for another year.
Yep. And do you cut at an angle to your planting line, or do you
look? Depending on how we sow, we don't cut on an angle because we're trying to control traffic. So we try to run the balers and the rakes and our pickup wagons down tram lines, so on our dryland country. So that's why we inter-row sow our oats and try and keep that previous double, because you do really need to keep your oat hay off the ground. It's good if you keep all hay off the ground, but cereal hay is one that you actually can, because it's the wind that will do more curing. You get a hot wind, that is what will kill your hay out. If you have got it sitting down on the ground, like your headlands where you drive over it while you're cutting, they won't cure out the same as what the rest of your hay will. So something that's very important is to, with your headlands, you need to get them in the air earlier and sacrifice them from your main crop. Same as around the headlands around your paddocks. If you've got trees blowing limbs into your paddock or leaves, we keep all our headlands away from our main crop just to chase up that better quality in the middle of the paddock. So that's the most crucial thing, is keeping the hay up, getting the wind underneath it as well as through it. Too big a windrow will prevent the wind getting right through and slow your curing time down. Too small a windrow will give you a lot more discoloration from the dews. So trying to pick that happy medium is just looking at your crop. We do have different size conditioners, like we've got a 16-footer and a 19-footer. So depending on the crop, we'll match the different width roller to the different crop type, depending on how it's grown.
Yeah. And how high do you cut it, Cole? If you when
generally that 4 to 5 inches. Yeah. The bigger the crop, the taller I'll cut, because the bottom of your stem doesn't give you any quality. That's what will deteriorate from your feed test as well. So the smaller the crop, the lower I will go. But generally I don't like coming under that 4 inches.
And if you had a rain event coming your way and your crop was ready to go, would you be inclined to? What would your philosophy be then? Would you still cut? Or?
We will still cut, yes. Especially with open hay, timing of cutting is crucial. That is one of the first steps in producing a quality. If you can get all the heads out of the sheep and get it just before it starts flowering, that'll give you the best quality. If you've got a rain event coming and you don't think you'll get back on your paddocks for another 10 days, you will have flowered, you will have started to fill grain, and you've lost quality already. So we will go out and cut in front of rain, because rain will not do a lot of damage to your cereal hay directly after cutting because it's still full of stem moisture, so it won't allow the rain in. But the rain will do the main damage as your balers go into the paddock, not as the mowers are coming up. Yeah. So no, we won't hesitate to cut in front of rain.
So on an average sort of season like this, if you had a rain event come and you had already cut and it was on the ground, would you be inclined to rake that into a larger windrow to protect it more from the rain? Or
no, not really, because it'll take longer to dry out. Right. Yeah, so you'll do more damage by raking it in front of the in front of rain.
Yeah.
So no, just walk away, go to the pub, and forget you own it for a little bit, and just let the weather do itself. Yeah.
And how many rakings would you normally, in a normal season, would you rake once, twice?
Once is all we, I hate raking any more than once. So we will let the hay sit there and cure out. Because we get going early in the season before the major heat turns up, one rain event will not hurt the hay. It's multiple rain events we find that will do the damage. We haven't got the high humidity like some of you guys up in Queensland will have. So what works here may not work for people in the other part of the country. We do have great weather for curing hay. We'll get the sunshine, but then we can get dews at night to help bale. So our raking philosophy is what we want to bale tonight and tomorrow morning, I'll rake today. But yeah, because that's exposing all the good coloured hay that you've got underneath the bleached top of your windrow. So that's opened up for more bleaching with the next dew that you get. Because what actually takes the colour out of your hay is the moisture evaporating out of your hay. So when you get the dew on it in the morning and then the sun evaporates that dew off, it takes the colour with it. Yep. So that's why we really try to only rake enough for what we can bale in a day.
And Cole, it's great there you're talking about dew moisture and also stem moisture.
Yeah.
They describe the difference, but can you, when you're looking at a windrow, how do you look at your stem moisture that you, what
tell the difference between the two?
Tell the difference. Yeah.
Well, you go out in the driest part of the day. So depending on where you live, head out in the driest part of the day and see if you can. That's when we have a look. For us, it's sort of 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, running around and just checking all the nodes to make sure that they can crack, that there's no moisture in any. It's also in a droughty conditions. There'll be a little slither of going up the middle of the top node into the seed head. That's where you really need to split your stem open and have a look in there to find, look for moisture. Because that is where all the sugars are, and that's what will feed you, the organisms to help heat your hay up. So we make sure that we're fully cured before we move our hay. In the bottom of your windrow or the middle, there might be just 2 or 3 nodes out of 10 that might be just a fraction rubbery. You've got to look at what the weather's coming. By leaving them in the air 24 hours or a day before you bale, quite often we'll take that out.
Yeah.
So it's we go out and start with the headlands and we bale them out and get them out of the paddock so they don't get mixed up with our hay. And that'll give you a good indication of what your crop's doing.
Yep. And so the other advantage you've got, and I remember coming here 9-10 years ago, and you're one of the first people I knew, or first growers I knew, had a steamer.
Yeah, right.
So you've had a lot of experience
with
steamers. Yeah. Can you explain the differences and advantages?
Yeah, the great thing about the steamer, they're not for everybody. But they are a fantastic tool. We find that we can always go to work, especially in front of rain. You'll notice you will not get a dew for a couple of days prior to you getting rain. So with the steamer, you can go out and bale all night. Bales. But we're able to allocate, we know how much hay we're going to get done in a day. So I can send guys out on hay rakes knowing that I need them to get that job done. You haven't got somebody sitting in the paddock all night waiting for a dew. We can go out. What used to happen when we first bought it, is I'd go out in the morning after making sure everybody was busy. I'd service the baler up, and then you'd either go and look at vetch or you look at cereal hay, and you can go to work it through till the temperature gets up to that 27 or 8 degrees. Then you've got to pour a heap of steam on, and once you put a heap of steam on, then that generates other issues. That hay's got to sit out a lot longer before you can stack it. So I used to pull up again, reservice the baler up, get it ready to go, and then once that sun starts dropping in the horizon, I'd start baling again until about 7 o'clock, when my brother would turn up and take over, and he'd bale through to the dew wet come in. And so I was going home at 7 o'clock. So, yeah, and then that was running through to the dew came in. And because we had somebody in the paddock, as soon as we knew that we were turning the steam down, it was right to get the balers without steam going again. So then make a phone call, and the guys would come out, hop on the other balers, and go straight to work. So utilising our staff is a lot better. We have truck drivers turn up in the morning, they know they've got hay to cart. Where before they turn up, we haven't had a G, so then we've got to look for something else to do. So our utilisation of staff is, and the logistics has just been a real big game changer for us. We're able to, people say that, okay, we've had wet weather, you wouldn't need it as easily, but we find we use it just as much with heavy dews as what we do light dews. Because in a heavy dew situation, by the time you get the bottom of your windrow into a condition to be able to bale hay at the correct moisture, the top of your windrow's all been blown out and it's dry and chaffy. So we just turn steam on the top of the windrow, not underneath, and then we're able to bring that back to life and get more even moisture content through our windrow.
And do you use inoculants in cereal hays? Or
not in cereal hay, because most of our cereal hay goes to export, which has to be under 14% moisture.
Yep.
So, yeah, we don't find inoculant. And advantage for that.
Right, okay. And just going on to your baling side of things now, what type of baler have you got, and what weights are you getting in your balers?
Look, we've been running Massey balers. Because of they're a cheaper baler to run. We noticed that we can get away with Masseys and bale weight, because as soon as you put steam on, you'll pick up anywhere from 30 to 50 kilos of bale. And we have got cutters in our balers, so they're XD 270s. And having cutters in there, on our lower quality open hay or cereal hay, we'll throw knives in and cut it as well. So between the cutting and the steam, we're still able to obtain those high 600 kilo bale weights.
Yeah.
Because what we do notice is in bale weight, if you've got low water soluble carbohydrate hay, you'll get low bale weight. The better quality hay, the better bale weight you'll achieve.
Now, this one is a bit of a question without notice. Wondering what sort of shrinkage you note in your sheds from when you bale and stack it in the shed, when that's coming out.
That's probably one I can't really answer because we stack everything in the shed
at
baling time.
Yep.
As the rule, we haven't got time to be able to deliver hay during the harvest program. So we just shed the lot and then move on to grain harvest, get that over and done with, and hopefully Christmas is here and you've had a holiday before you worry about moving anything. So I haven't really had a big notice on that.
Okay. Right.
What I will notice is we bale everything about 12.5, 13% moisture with steamer. You'll pull that out of the shed at 10.5 every day. It'll drop 2% moisture.
Yep.
The other thing with the steamer you have to be careful about is temperature. If you start running high steam, trying to bring really lifeless hay back into life to bale, you will kick them out the back of the baler at 45, 50, 55 degrees. So we don't stack anything in the sheds until it gets down to 40 degrees before it'll go in the shed. So we run around temperature probes in our stackers, and nothing's allowed to stack over 40 degrees.
Yep. So that was, you obviously, I think everything I've ever inspected on your farm has always been stacked in a shed.
Yeah.
So you fully understand the advantages of having hay in shed and the weights and the actual tonnage you can fit in your sheds due to those weights and everything.
That's right.
So yeah, have you got any other sort of thoughts on sheds against outside stacks or?
Totally against outside stacks. Look, hay caps, if you've got overflow, are really good short term. But if you've got hay in sheds and stored correctly, you can enter and if you've got quality hay in a shed with 24-hour a day wet weather access, you can enter the market any time that you're choosing and sell your hay. But if you've got hay stacked outside, it's in their clientele base, until such time as there's no shedded hay left, they won't touch it. No, they always ask for shedded hay first. And it's just so much easier to manage. You don't have to worry about rain getting on your hay and heating your hay up. And you're losing quality anyway. How many people do you know will harvest grain and just tip it on the ground without covering it? Not very many. And I don't know why they do it with hay, because you can lose 50% of the hay. I got caught last year with hay that, was stacked outside, and it turned out to be a bit of a nightmare.
Yeah, no, well, Feed Central, last year was a bugger of a year for it. Yep. We were doing inspections of hay in stacked outside, and we were, selling it 4 or 5 months later, and it was not the same product as we originally inspected.
No, it wasn't.
So we've now made the decision that anything that's inspected in the paddock, and even with hay caps and tarps on and that, we're only going to advertise it for 3 months and go that way. But no, sheds are definitely,
only way to go. They pay for themselves really quickly. Because the other thing that you can do is you can play the market. You can hold off if you want to. A shed will pay for itself within 2 to 3 years max. Quite often I've had sheds pay for themselves in 12 months, but 3 years at the outside.
So, going on to the marketing side of things, obviously do some export hay, domestic hay, and through Feed Central.
Yes.
What's the breakup on that, roughly? And
it changes every year. It really depends on what the market's doing. The export would probably be on our cereal hay. Our export would be up to 80%, I'd imagine. Our domestic hay, we'd probably have 60% of our own domestic market. And then the rest is probably through you guys.
Yep. And you use our quality certificate?
Use the quality certificate? Yeah, most definitely, yeah.
And just the last point, and I know it's a little bit of a difficult one for you, but you had your first shed fire last year. Can you tell us what your learnings were on that? Or?
No, I can't. It's if I had to, it's like I said, we've been in the hay game for as long as I can remember. Last year was our first shed fire. Can't actually know what caused it. Well, we know it was internal combustion, but whether it got through our systems, because it was veg hay. It was a bit unfortunate. We had a shed with about 300 bales, a facility of about 19 sheds, all hold around the 500 bales per shed. There was a distance between them all. So we had 300 bales in one shed of veg, probably some of the best veg we did, high energy. It was top quality. It was baled without rain on it, shedded without rain on it. The paddock had been spray topped 48 hours before cutting. We had moisture tested every bale going in the shed as per usual. We had temperature probes in those stacks that didn't show any excess temperature. Even that morning, I could smell something that morning in the facility, the hay facility. Went around all our sheds, checked all our probes. I thought it was in the hospital shed, because we run a hospital shed where all our headland bales go, that we monitor greatly, because if you're going to have any issues, it'll be in your headlands, because as you're cutting your paddocks, you're driving over that hay, pushing that hay into the ground, and it won't cure out the same as the rest of the paddock sitting up. So our headlands just never see the same shed. So Yeah, that was at 8 o'clock in the morning. Then by midday, we could see smoke. And then 15 minutes after that, the whole shed was alive. It just went up that quickly. I don't know whether there was a hole in the roof of the shed that may have caused it or something got through our system. But it was early on in the season. There had been 60 mil of rain after that hay was shedded. It's the only reason I'm thinking it could possibly be rain. I'd been in the shed for 2 months before it went up. So I'm really at a loss what caused it, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Oh, well, thanks, Cole. There's a lot of great information there. Thank you very much. I've always enjoyed our times together when we've been caught up and been together
Thank you,
looking
Steve.
at hay, and thank you for your participation.
No, thank you, and thank you for the Feed Central team for all the backup they give us through the year as well. It is appreciated.
So, Mark,
Thank you,
back to
Cole. Thank you, Steve. There's a lot in there. I'm glad that we are recording this because there's plenty of information there for us to go back over. I will start just sharing again. This essentially concludes the formalities for the afternoon before we head into the Q&A session. But yeah, key points from the webinar is essentially the stockpile's largely gone. Yep, much of the hay you see is already sold. Demand is going to be there for all grades of hay, but fill your sheds and bale some good quality high density bales. Because as we know, the majority of the hay is made 90 days of the year, but cows eat, and all animals, whether we're growing hay for, eat 365 days of the year. So what I'll just say is the tips for the profitable hay booklet, which a lot of this, you can't even see, it's not picking it up. That's where a lot of this information has come from, but we'll be sending that out to everyone who's been involved with this webinar via email. So you'll be seeing that booklet real soon. But straight up now we have the Q&A session, which we've got plenty of questions have come through, which is fantastic. So if you want to ask any more during this session now, you've got opportunity to, as I said, click on that Q&A box down the bottom to ask more questions. And then you can as well raise your hand if you want to ask a question. And look, here we go. Tim Ford, you've raised your hand. I will let you speak. Go for it, mate.
I just want to know if the Radcliffes are going to have a crack at winning any more awards this year. I see all the awards in the background. I just want to know if the Radcliffes are going to have a crack at winning some more this year, because you did just having a crack at you guys. You didn't win any last year, so I want to see you back. I want to see you back. I want to see you back on the podium this year.
Are you open to bribery and corruption?
No, it's all deadly serious.
Been able to manage it this far.
Yeah, deadly serious here, Cole. It's all by the book. Sorry.
I'm afraid it is. I've tried.
Well, Steve might a dinner out and a few beers.
No, I'm afraid not. I've tried Steve as well.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tim. All right, first question we have straight up is for Steve and for Cole there, or essentially Steve. From Harumi, do you have any data from North Queensland? We didn't really touch on that North Queensland market, but Steve, can you talk on what's happening on the hay growing market up North Queensland?
No, sorry, I haven't really touched base with anyone up there recently. Yes, we do go right up into, I've been up into Tully looking at hay in previous years. Up through there, we've got growers right out through that west of Townsville, right out through that region. I haven't really touched base with anyone up that area recently in the last couple of months. So sorry, I can't help you on that one.
That's all right. Another question we've come through here. I'll send it to Brad from Sam. What's the best stage of plant growth to cut cereal hay?
Oh, we like to target around that flowering sort of area. Obviously dependent on weather forecasts and stuff like that. Sometimes we manipulate a time of cutting around a forecast, and if you've got your own machinery, you can sort of do that. But yeah, I reckon the optimum time is still that flowering window.
Yep. One for Harry here from William. What type of wheat varieties are people cutting for hay? Are they an ornless variety such as bar wheat, or what do you grow, mate?
To be really honest, I haven't had too much to do with wheat and hay, but beardless varieties go a long way without a doubt.
Yep. And on those bearded varieties, we had a question from Sam Dave. Are the wheat and barley bearded varieties less desirable? You're on mute, Dave.
Sorry. In
All
the
good.
feedlot sector, they are less desirable just because of those long-fed animals. They're concerned about just issues with those bearded varieties. So some do, but the long-fed typically will not use them. Short-fed can use them, but it is a preference, and depending on which nutritionist they use. But it's just like talking about bar weights as far as I'm concerned, like you produce what the customer wants and it will move ahead of the rest of the pack.
In the context of a frosted wheat and hay, you'll see extensive bearded hay being cut, and the beardless would sell first, but generally very small quantities of beardless, and it can be from time to time very large quantities of bearded hay. And a lot of customers may resist it for the first 5 minutes, and then after they've received it, they won't even ask you again. They'll just keep buying it. So yeah, historically in those dry years, no problems at all in selling bearded hay. In these years where, you know, the customers have been a little bit more finicky, then yes, absolutely. But in a real good, like if we had a million tons of, if the country had 1 million tons of bearded hay in the last 12 months, every bale would have sold without doubt. But you know, instead we had 1 million tons of weather damaged 2022 hay in the shed, and that all sold. So yeah, just wouldn't, from a haymaking perspective, yeah, wouldn't hesitate putting bearded hay in the shed if it was if you got a frost or something like that.
Yep. Thanks, Tim. We've got a question here from John for you, Nathan. What sort of tons per acre do you normally see with barley? I averaged around 2.5 per acre on my barley crop this year.
Per acre, I work on hectares, so
You can go off hectares.
Yeah,
that's fine.
no, that's probably pretty similar. Yeah, it's around that sort of. Last year we did 6 ton. You know, that was a bit of a, you know, below average rainfall for in crop too. So this year we'd expect maybe a ton above that.
Yep. Okay. Gives some insight there. Question for you, Rob, from Harumi. How do I get into the export market?
Pretty I think you just reach out to the exporters that are closest to you, depending on which part of the country you are, and their buyers will just run through a few things and check that I've got the hay that's suitable, and work through that. So the AEXCO website probably has the best list of contact details for the exporters, but it's pretty simple of just reaching out to the companies in the area that you're operating in, and they'll put you through to one of their buyers.
Great. Thank you, Rob. Question for you, Cole and Steve. You may have touched on a little bit of this. How much vetch hay will there be cut in Victoria with the late start and dry finish?
I think the veg hay in Victoria will be fairly low, because the people that used to grow a lot of veg hay have all gone into lentils in the last few years. With lentil prices, the gross margins in lentils have certainly taken over from veg. And with the people that started out with a bit of moisture in their profile, have all jumped on board. So, yeah, I think that veg hay in Victoria is going to be a lot less than normal. It would be down more than 40%, I believe, in our area anyway.
Yeah, I would have even thought a little bit more than that. There's some of the veg crops also have really struggled to make enough vegetable matter to even cut. So it'll be sprayed out as, basically green manure, and put back into the soil, because it's such a good crop for adding nitrogen back into the soil for next year's crop. any of that is cut and tried to be made into bales is going to have quality issues. I think there'll be a lot of dust and everything get into it. Having said that, there is going to be some vetch, above the border in New South Wales. There's different areas up through there that are looking quite good. And some of that vetch area, we've got growers sort of moving further north a little bit with vetch into their rotations. Some of them are still learning on what they need to do into planting it and how to manage it. But definitely the vetch area is going to be back this year. But we've also got lucerne that's going to probably fill that gap, hopefully.
All right, another one for you, Steve, from Cecil. What are your thoughts on tedding immediately after mowing? Also, on the constant tedding, how much of an advantage is it to bring the baling dates forward, and how does it affect the quality?
Well, definitely depends on where he is. We actually, Colin and I discussed this one this morning. The less in this region here and further north, the less you touch your cereal hay in the paddock and keep turning it, the better. So as Cole said earlier on, he only really rakes his once in front of the baler. Stay away from it, leave it alone. If you had a rain event coming, again, it can survive through a rain event, providing it's only one and only minor. Better than tethering it out and then trying to get it dry and in a bale before it. On that southern Victoria area with different crops down there and a different region with higher humidity and everything, potentially can be down there, but that would be really down that really southern area of Victoria, South Australia.
Up here in the Mallee, especially if you're into minimum till where you've got a lot of furrows that you're playing with in your paddocks, by tedding it out and bringing it back in, certainly brings a lot more impurities into your hay. If you've got sowing traditionally and you've been harrowed and rolled dead flat, depending what crop you're talking about too. But the first few days directly after cutting, you don't lose a lot of your colour. So it could be tedded out for a couple of days if you aren't going to pull a lot of impurities into your hay when you do rake it. If you've got it sitting down on the ground, you're not going to get an enormous advantage because you need the wind going through your hay to actually cure it. Sun helps a little bit, but wind does a lot more.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. One for you again, Harry. Do you treat your fertiliser program differently between growing hay or grain?
Yeah, little bit. We'd like to bring our fertiliser forward a bit more to get a bit more bulk in our hay crops. So yeah, just a little bit.
Yep. Great. I'm just having a quick look through here on the questions. I think we've covered off on most of these. Yep. Taking into account, this might be one for you, Tim, taking into account all discussed today on a buyer's and user's view, would you be recommending security a majority of required supply early in the season? If not, what percentage?
That question's actually from Kieran Maxwell. So thanks, Kieran, for the tough questions. Hope you're doing well, mate. So I'll read it again. Taking into account all discussed today on a buyer's and user's view, trust Kieran to be always thinking about the buyer. Would you be recommending security majority of required supply early in the season? If not, what percentage? Yeah, tough question. On the spot too. Why don't I handball that to somebody else? Rob, you might be a good one at that. Seriously, look, a buyer with hay storage, it's probably, historically there's a dip in prices during the harvest period. So a buyer with hay storage would probably pay this year to, especially while grain prices are down and hay prices just might follow for temporarily. So while the if they've got hay storage, yeah, if I was a buyer, I'd be buying early in the season. If they don't have hay storage, then yes, it would be a good time to contract hay now, because there'll be a lot of sellers that are looking to have a contract, have the certainty of a contract, and have the certainty of cash flow going forward. And then, we would make sure that was in a shed and stored and stock taked regularly to ensure that that supply was always there. And yeah, most importantly, to be buying hay that's been stored and cared for properly. So you might have to pay a little bit of a premium over the spot market, but it would definitely pay for that buyer to be thinking very seriously about their long-term plans now, and to start talking about that now for sure. Yeah, and thank you for the question, Kieran.
Thank you, Kieran. Thank you, Tim. We've got a question here on pasture hay. I'm not sure if the growers here are growing pasture. I'll put it out to whoever wants to answer this one. What's the average yield on pasture hay, and how many cuts a year do you sort of cut? Steve-O, yep. Thank you, mate.
I'm actually going to handball that to Cole because, we're talking southern pasture down here. So
Look, yield, yeah. I mean, that's an impossible one to answer, because depending on where you're growing your pasture hay. Up in our region, which is Central Vic, under irrigation, we can quite often pull the first. Quite often, what we used to do is pull the first cut off at about 5 tonne a hectare, and then move into grain production for the clovers and just harvest the clover seed. Your second cut, if you wanted to run it through, you're probably better off doing the first one in silage and then pull the second one through into hay. And you might average your 5 tonne of silage to start with, and then 3 tonne a hectare of pasture. But that's only in our situation. Further south, they can probably do better than that. Southern Victoria, this is. You might be able to pull your 5 tonne silage and then move into a 4 or 5 tonne hay crop as well. But up here, our temperature gets going too quickly for a good second cut.
So, Cole, I've got a couple of other questions on that one, on the pastures. So what sort of, what do you got, a rye clover?
Rye clover, yeah.
Blend?
Yeah, rye clover blend. Yeah.
And when would it be your first cut in this region?
In this region, their first cut would probably be, well, like I said, when we're growing silage, the first cut would have been done about a fortnight ago.
Yeah.
Would have been done mid-August for your silage. And then you would be in start of December for your hay crop. Where what we used to do with pasture is cut later. So that would be one of our last to be cut. So we'd be cutting our pasture hay in more like start of October. And then, we would be spraying out the grasses going through for a seed crop.
Yep. And what sort of mix would you do with your clover to rye? Would 50-50, or what do you look at there?
Look, it's been a while since we've done it. Probably somewhere around 50-50, yeah.
All right.
Thank you, gentlemen. Tim, you've raised your hand for another question.
Yeah, I just thought while we were with Steve and Cole, extensive experience there with the Radcliffes with Vetch, especially when you were doing a lot of contracting through the Mallee and Wimmera. Cole, experience with getting top quality vetch. We see a lot of, we see a lot of test feed. We see a lot of vetch feed tests really well, which is its strength. But to get a good feed test, low dust, and a good colour is really hard. Just give us the basics on the requirements to actually get a nice, attractive looking vetch. How does that happen? Is that luck, or is that management, or both?
Oh, look, you've got to have a bit of luck to go along with it, Tim. The least you touch it, the better, to try and keep the dust out of your hay. We find a lot of the hay done in the Mallees up in that 12, 15-inch row spacing. So that will tend to get more dust into your hay. So the smaller the row spacing, make sure you're well rolled. make sure that when you're cutting, don't go down and try and take all your veg. Just leave a little bit of veg behind and try and sit your hay up on top. Easy to do when you've got a 4-ton veg crop, but when you're struggling to get a 2-ton veg crop, pretty hard to leave anything behind. But if you can just take the tops off your veg rather than taking the whole plant, you will certainly get a better quality hay. It's all about the size of your row as well. If you get too big a windrow of veg, it sits there nice and tight, and it'll take a long time to cure out and open the elements a lot more. So it's getting that nice deep windrow that you don't have to rake several times to get enough for your baler. So it's a real tricky one, that one, in having your windrows big enough that you only have to rake 2 into 1 rather than 4, but having too much in your hay that it won't cure out. The less hay you got exposed to the elements, the better, because if you can put a lot of hay in the middle of your windrow, that's where you'll get your quality from. You'll get your bleaching on the top, and and then you might quite often will see their rates up a little bit and leave a little bit of veg behind out, rather than trying to pull the whole windrow out of your paddock, because then you'll be dragging mud with it if you've had rain. So it's a case of don't be too greedy with it. Be prepared to leave a little bit behind. And speed's got a lot to do with it as well. If you've got to run at 15k an hour down the paddock, picking up windrows of veg, you'll get dust into your hay in the pickup with the wheels of your tractor. If you can get enough in there that you can slow that down to 10 or 12k an hour, you'll get less dust in your hay as well.
And the maturity of cutting, Cole? Mid-flower?
Mid-flower, before you start to see the pods. Yeah. You don't have to cut at the first flower anymore. Used to when we were just cutting with windrowers and slashes, but now that it's actually being conditioned, you can get away with mid-flowering quite easily. Used to be around that 10% when you were just windrowing. Small veg crops, so when you're looking at those 2-ton veg crops, don't be afraid to go out with a windrow up front and throw it into a 30 or 40 foot windrow and not condition it, because a short veg doesn't really need conditioning like a big tall plant. It'll still get out and cure quite okay, and it will also give you a longer baling window unconditioned veg, because once the dew gets in, it will hold the moisture in the plant for longer, and you'll keep more leaf on. So don't be afraid on the years where it's a little bit tough and you're debating whether to cut or not. Don't be afraid to throw the big windrowers into that.
And the mower conditioner, if you're putting a mower conditioner through it, what sort of rollers and how hard do you have them?
Different rollers. We still use the same rollers, of course, steel rollers, but we do back the pressure off. You don't want to be bruising your leaf, or muching it up, because you'll see that when you're cutting, it's got a lot of moisture in it as a rule. So as soon as you start to see it all mulched up in the windrow, you're conditioning too hard. So we back off and try not to bruise a leaf. So certainly nowhere near as hard as what we do oats or cereal.
Great. Thank you. One for you again, Steve. Looking for a contractor, what advice can you give if I'm looking for a contractor to bale my hay?
If you're looking for a contractor, new equipment or modern equipment, try and find ones that are reasonably local, because so that you can keep in touch with them. They can keep having a look at your paddock, making sure everything's ready to go. Hopefully someone who's not overly committed. And also, where you look behind here with Cole, they've won awards with us, therefore we know that they've done good jobs. So, and they've got a reputation. That's, Feed Central's setting up we've got our contractors website setting up there now. We're getting more involved with the contractors all the time and assisting them. possibly even don't have a handshake, just have a written agreement. Build a relationship with your contractor, because hopefully they're going to keep coming back year after year for you too and doing a good job.
Great. Thank you, Steve. Dave, we just had a question come in. What's the quality and demand of TEF hay?
A challenging question. We haven't had a lot of experience in that space, albeit there has been some sales in recent months, but not really one from me, I'm sorry.
All right. And then, Tim, lastly, we had someone asking us about the importance of AFIA. They want to join AFIA. What does joining AFIA mean, and what can that do for them by joining AFIA?
I'll just go to that TEF one.
Oh, yep. Sure.
The TEF, in my view, the TEF is a niche market that's sort of outside the bounds of Feed Central, and it's there has been demand in recent years for TEF as a low sugar hay into the horse equine market, especially in Southern Australia, similar to the market for Rhodes grass in Queensland for a low sugar horse equine based market. So strong demand from that sector. That sector is typically small quantities, reasonably large volume, but very small parcels of 1 bale through to a ute load or half a truckload or 20 bales at a time, 20 small bales, and historically small square bales as well. So yeah, that demand for TEF is niche. It's probably growing. It's just outside the bounds of Feed Central and this webinar, but a really interesting one nonetheless. In relation, what was the question about AFIA, Mark?
Yeah, if I'm looking to join AFIA, what's the benefits, or what do I need to join AFIA?
Well, just a warning on this one, Harry. I might flick it to you in a sec, because you're a new member and you've been sort of reasonably actively involved for a couple of years now. So just have a think about that one. But for me, we've been AFIA members for almost 25 years. And for me, it's been a national connections and a network of people that you can call upon for knowledge and for knowledge and wisdom. That's been the main benefit for me. I believe AFIA has made tremendous progress around freight. I know we continually criticise in that space, but if you go back 20 years, we've made significant inroads into freight and lobbying at a national level. There is always more work to do in that space. It's never done. But if you look at where we can get road trains now through Victoria and New South Wales, where we couldn't get road trains 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And that's opened up markets for the Victorian fodder industry. There's been a lot of work done in that space over a long period of time, and previous directors have put extensive amount of work into that area. It's often unrecognised. It's really hard to quantify, but it's slow and progressive. Right through to the most recent conference, having members of the federal road transport people whose name just currently escapes me, and HVR. Thank you, Mark. Having them there, being able to talk directly with them, chew their ear, and so forth. When I talk to members, it's around connection and relationships, grassroots connections and relationships. But Harry, why you've recently joined? You're spending your $500 a year or thereabouts to be a member. Why are you a member?
Yeah, definitely the networking. Well, a lot of the information that I've gained has been through AFIA, and I wouldn't have come across Feed Central if it wasn't thanks to AFIA. They always flicking through a lot of information, and if there's something that you need, generally you go and look on the website, the emails that they send you, and you can get a fair bit from it. So that it's certainly been a benefit to me without a doubt.
Great. Thank you, Harry. Thank you, Tim. If anyone's got any more questions, now's your last chance to raise your hand or post it. But if nothing comes through in the next short period, I would just like to say a massive thank you to everyone. Thank you for the webinar. Thank you to everyone who's contributed. It's been a cracker. If you want more tips, as I said, we'll send out the tips for a profitable hay season booklet. Stay tuned for more tools and tech videos and podcasts that Feed Central will keep pushing out over the season. So without further ado, I'd like to say thank you and cheers.